Hey everybody, how's it going? I'm Alejandro Perez, the CGI Nerd, and in this video we're going to be taking a look at a cleanup process and kind of some of my thought process that I was going through and a little bit more of the design process for the main character. I came up with the name for the game, at least a temporary name. I don't know if I'm 100% sticking with it. I'm thinking about calling it Odd or Orbital Delivery Drone. So the character himself, he's Odd. I thought it was kind of like a fun name and playing with like acronyms like NASA does and a lot of military type things do. So that's kind of my thought process with the name right now. But yeah, so Odd, I went through and just started cleaning up a lot of the lines. I copied him from Sketchbook Pro, and then I pasted him inside of Photoshop to do all the cleanup because I feel like Sketchbook Pro is like definitely like really good for sketching, but when it comes to wanting to clean up the drawing and make a lot nicer quality drawing, for me, I find it easier to do it inside of Photoshop. Not that I couldn't do it inside of Sketchbook Pro, I just feel that it is a little bit faster for me to be able to do it in Photoshop. So I went through and I worked on cleaning up his line. So basically, I have the original sketch in a layer below, and then I started drawing on top of it and sampling colors from the layer below to get the colors that I chose. And like I said in the previous video, the colors that I chose for this version here is kind of like that yellow greenish kind of color from the old CRT monitors. And I really wanted to play off of that design a lot and kind of think of like a lot of vintage look for the design for the character, the little ears and the fin on top that is the like floppy drive latches. Then his green eyes, it's that green color that you would get the text with those old CRT monitors. So I think in the original design it had blue eyes, but I really wanted to switch it up to the green. And I think with the color palette that makes it a little bit kind of more consistent. It's staying within the warmer colors. Like the coolest anything gets on him is that green color in his eyes, and then it goes into the yellows and the reds and things like that. So it gives him a lot of color harmony that is working in here. So um, I could throw like a little tiny bit of a blue tint on something, and maybe eventually I'll do that because I haven't started thinking about like the detailing. I'm really just working on the major big shapes. So if you look at his head, it's basically like a big box, and his body's a big box. His arms are cylinders. So I'm looking at those big kind of silhouette making shapes without working too much on the details on the inside. I think that eventually I'm going to probably have like emblems, like kind of how NASA would have a patch on the shoulder and like a name tag on the chest and things like that. I'll probably add details like that uh, when I am coming up with the final version of this character. But right now, I really wanted to kind of have a little bit cleaner of a illustration that I'm working with, and that way I know exactly what I'm working with. I did start adding a tiny bit of details in the drawing when it came to the head, because I did want to kind of make it look a little bit more like a CRT monitor. So in a little bit after I finish the flames, I believe, I go through and I start adding the kind of little edge and the uh, kind of a recessed thing where the front clamps onto the back part of the tube part of the CRT monitor. Um, and most of this was done with just kind of flat painting with a normal paintbrush. But here, where you can see where I'm doing the fire coming down, I really didn't want to spend the time to kind of feather that out and just do regular painting. So what I did was just use the smudge tool inside of Photoshop, and using the smudge tool really gave it the ability to kind of stand out and look a little bit more like flames. I could do some effects and Photoshop and make it look even more like that, but I figured it was close enough this way. Here you can see that I'm starting to work on the environment, and this is kind of my first pass and really kind of basic preliminary look at what the background might be for this game, and thinking about the color palette and things like that. So in the background, I'm sticking with a lot more blues. Also, just a moment ago, I kind of used a bigger smudge tool to try to adjust the curve, because I wanted to have an arc that was almost more like kind of a C, where the character was flying and the flame was kind of really messing that up a little bit. So that's why I was doing that, just to get the line of action looking a little bit more interesting. So yeah, with the background, I am sticking with a cooler palette, and the reason I really want to do that is that it separates the character from the background, and it makes the um, player or the person viewing this game experience, make it look, or make it find his attract the eyes much quicker to that particular aspect. So you'll see that he stands out from everything in the background because he contrasts to it. So it's a little speck that is kind of this orange, yellow, red color. It's a warm tone where everything else is cooler palette, and because of that, it will stand out amongst everything else and make it easier for the player to follow. So that's kind of my thinking behind that, and also just thinking about rocks and asteroids and things like that. That's all going to be kind of cool toned anyways, so that makes sense, and I can try to make sure as much as possible I can do the planets and things like that in that range, although there might be like Mars type planets that are kind of red, but I'm going to try to make it work where it really stands out different. I might play with saturation and things like that. So I did draw some of the major asteroids in the background, and then just to get a lot of the smaller asteroids that he's flying through in there, I had a kind of scattered brush, one of the brush presets on inside of Photoshop, and I kind of really quickly did that, so that way you can see that there's going to be a lot of asteroids in there, but I didn't spend a ton of time just painting each one of those individually. Here's the details that I was saying that I kind of started adding a tiny bit, where I wanted it to look more like a CRT monitor in the head. So I had that little edge, and then the vents in the back where so I could breathe. And then also looking at the bottom here, we can see that the button, I was looking at some old videos, not videos, but photography from the Freedom 7 missions from NASA, the original space race missions that they had. And there was like these really cool, interesting buttons, and there were like a lot of buttons everywhere. So I wanted his kind of thing in the chest right now to kind of represent that. And in my head right now, it almost feels like an on-off switch. Like that's how he powers down or powers on, or maybe it's the button to set up a portal or something like that. I don't know exactly at this point, but I thought it was an interesting element to kind of bring the design. It needed something there, but I'll have to find out the function, because I don't want to be just there to be. It can even be something like a power core, where it is powering up the whole robot or something like that. But yeah, that's kind of my concept and my thought process so far with this character. I hope you found it useful. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe. I find that very helpful to help the channel grow and get this information to as many people that can find it useful. Other than that, we'll see you guys in the next video. Bye. Thank you.